people will continue to disappoint you unless you tell them what you expect. And as leaders, as coworkers, as humans, we need to let people know what we expect. It doesn't mean we
Yeah.
demand something from them. I mean, as a leader, you can set the goals and expectations, etc. But when I have a leader come to me and say, I can't believe they did this way, or I can't believe that they didn't understand what I wanted.
Yeah.
And sometimes the response is as simple as, well, did you tell them? And you'd be surprised, Phil, how many times it's like, well, I just thought they would know.
Becky Ploeg, welcome to Keys to the Community.
Thanks, Phil. I'm excited to be here and spend some time with you today.
Yeah, thank you. So, Becky, who is Becky? Tell me about Becky.
Gosh, who's Becky? Becky is a 30 plus year HR professional who fell into HR by chance and has always been grateful for that. I did not follow a typical path. My first HR career role was with Target stores, and I'll always appreciate that because they were well ahead of the norm with that, and really kind of led my career to always focus on not being the department of no in the corner. Sometimes HR can get a bad rap for that, right? Where at
Oh,
Target
yeah.
stores you were part of the complete organization. You might be running a lane, helping unload a truck, stock a shelf, and oh, by the way, you're also the HR person. So it really helps me develop the people first mentality of HR, which has carried me through my career and into my new opportunity that I'm doing now.
Yes. So, tell me about Water's Edge Coaching. What is that about?
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. I in January of this year launched it formally, and I really am just really taking some of the expertise that I've used over my career and things that people naturally reached out to me for, and focusing it in how I can give back to the community on kind of sharing some of those experiences that I've had. Even in my career, the past 10 years or so, I've really focused on what can I do to give back to those who are new in their journey in HR, because I had so many people take good care of me throughout my early years, and I just feel it was important to give back. So Water's Edge Coaching is really built on three pillars. There's really three core fundamental areas that I'm working in. And the first is on coaching, both individual coaching as well as team coaching, and really working on that piece, and coming from a place of focusing on people's strengths versus trying to fix something all the time. Sometimes we kind of put that negative connotation to coaching, that I have to fix something, where my approach is more coming from a place of strengths, and how can we really help you put your best foot forward by focusing on what you naturally do well. And then the second piece is leadership development, and really taking that from design to delivery for organizations and making them custom to what they want. I obviously have some catalog items as well, but mostly custom work that I do for organizations. And then the third piece is really kind of my passion in this, building culture in organizations. And I love the opportunity to work with groups and help them take their core values from just words on a wall and really integrate them into their culture. Every organization has a culture, good, bad, or indifferent, and we have to be purposeful and focus on what we want that to be and what that shows up like for people at work.
Sure. So, why was January the time and not May or 3 Januaries ago? What prompted you to do this?
There wasn't a huge prompt to it. I hit my 10-year anniversary in January. My husband and I had planned for an extended vacation in Florida this year. And it's like, I think January is going to be the right time for me.
Okay. All right. So, I hesitated as we were preparing for this today of whether or not I wanted to ask you this question, because it could be kind of a loaded question, but I'm going to go for it because I know you'll be kind to me and I'll be kind to you. Uh, what is leadership? How do you define leadership? Who is a leader? And who I see people that believe they're leaders,
Right.
and they're probably not.
Yeah. No. And you're right. It is a pretty loaded question, but it's a great question because leadership shows up differently in different people. And that's where I think it's really important when you take on that commitment to be a leader. You have to focus on yourself and really kind of gain and build that self-awareness to know how you show up for others. Our goal as leaders is to break down barriers, etc., for others to help them be successful in their careers and be their best selves each and every day. And I think that that's a very important piece to it. At the end of the day, leadership's about people. And if you understand people and you understand what makes them tick, and if you understand what makes you tick, that whole self-awareness piece as a leader is key to really understand who you are and how you show up to others. So I think for leaders, my recommendation is to make sure they gain that self-awareness first through a variety of tools, through feedback partners, whatever that may be that works for them, but to really show up well for others, to make things successful for them. If you focus on people, your business is going to follow. If you focus on your leadership, same type of thing. And my other advice to leaders would just be to be intentional with it, to be intentional with being a leader.
Have you had the opportunity to watch someone maybe at a mid-level, maybe management position, which was a leadership position, but moved into maybe a higher level of leadership? And how did that occur? What was the exciting part for you about that?
Yeah, I think it's great to be able to watch people grow in their careers. And I had that opportunity fairly early in my career, where I was being challenged to take on a new higher role. But part of that piece was to make sure that I had my backfill prepared and ready to go. So I took that very seriously, because if I was being looked at as someone who warranted this very nice promotion, I wanted to make sure the person that filled my shoes was just as talented, if not more talented, to be able to take that role. So that was rewarding for me to be able to do that, but also very intentionally focused early on to really kind of slow down and explain the whys of why we do things as leaders. Because sometimes in business we move fast, right? And we need to get this done, and there's another fire over here that we need to put out. But as you're teaching, coaching, and training someone new, you need to slow down and kind of explain the whys. Because otherwise you might get compliance because you told them to do it, but you're not going to get that commitment. When they understand why they're doing something, they're going to be committed to doing it accurately and successfully. I've also seen the flip side of the coin, Phil, where someone's been promoted because they're the best widget maker in the widget factory. So let's make them the leader of widgets, and they have zero people skills and leadership capacity to do that. So I caution organizations on making sure that when they're promoting the best of an area up, that somebody who truly does want to lead people and has some base knowledge of that skill set that's required to do so.
Sure. That brings up a good point. Over the years in my sales career, I have seen good salespeople, great salespeople, get promoted into a sales management, sales, trainer kind of role, and they're terrible at it because they're really good at sales, but they're terrible at leading people in that management area. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, absolutely. And frankly, it's not fair to them, and it's not fair to the people that we've put them in charge of. Because if someone is uncomfortable as a leader, or worst case scenario, really doesn't want to be a leader, but just wants the title of it, it's not going to be successful for anyone, and you're going to see some turn in that team.
Yeah. So I'm a small business in West Michigan. I hear about Becky and Water's Edge coaching. I'm struggling with maybe succession planning, maybe filling a role in leadership. So I reach out to you and I say, Becky, help. Where do we start?
Yeah, the first thing we're going to do, Phil, is we're going to sit down and we're going to unpack what you're looking to fix and where the issues may be. And my role in that is to really listen. And you understand that as someone who works with the public and with clients as well, that listening part is so important to really understand what the need is and be able to address the need that's there. And a lot of times that is deepening the conversation to get to really maybe what the root of it is and how long it's been going on or what may change, and really picking up on the things that aren't said as well, or might be said in a different context than to what the subject is, and trying to pull that all together. And being very purposeful in listening and taking it all in, asking lots of questions and really discovering what the need is. Curiosity is key in that conversation to learn where we're at. Then we would talk about what a plan could look like to address the issues at hand. And we would agree on what makes sense with that, a timeline with it, and we'd go to work on making it happen.
You know, you mentioned listening, and this is something that I notice often in different settings and in my world as real estate, but also in my personal life. I think listening many times is a forgotten art. I mean, the old saying, you have two ears, one mouth. Let's listen. And I hear it so many times that either the person I'm speaking to or I'm in part of a conversation and go, wait a minute, didn't you just listen to what I know you heard them, but you didn't listen to them about what they just said.
Yep.
Do you see that?
Absolutely. And it's really sad, and I think we live in such a distracted world now, right? There's always something else vying for our attention. And a couple of examples come to mind. If you and I are having a conversation and we're doing this podcast right now, and I decide that my phone I needed to take a look at that, I've just stopped listening to you.
Yeah.
And I've focused my attention somewhere that it shouldn't be. Another thing I've seen people do is when they're in an office setting where they may be busy working away on their computer, someone comes to their doorway and they might just kind of look up and say, hey, but then they're talking to them while they're still looking at their screen because they're typing. Instead of pausing and giving that person their attention and really making them feel, seen, heard, and valued, which is what everyone wants, and to really kind of slow down for that. I'm a big believer in kind of restating what I heard you say is, and make sure that we're aligned on things like that. Because if you're not listening well, you could walk away thinking that, the issue that you're working on is something completely different than the issue that was brought to you. So it's really important to kind of ask those clarifying questions and really give the person your attention, make them feel seen and heard and valued, and put your attention where it should be.
When you're talking with a business owner about engaging them in coaching for themselves or different leaders within their company, I'm going back to listening. Are they listening to what it is that you have to offer, or is it more of, oh gosh, what does she have to say now? I listened to her for there it goes. I heard her for a couple of minutes, but I don't know that I really want to do this, and it sounds like it's going to be a lot of work.
Yeah, and I think that's one of those self-awareness tools, right? Where you have to kind of look for those reactions. And if you feel like someone's putting their guard up on it, kind of pause and just, make sure you're asking those questions of what would you like to better understand, or what do you feel would be the most impactful with this person? I'm coming in blind to the situation, right? So I'm counting on that person to give me as much information as they can. And I'm going to help them do that by asking them the right questions and then intently listening to what they're looking for. And I'll go back to picking up on some of those things that may not be actually said, but you're picking up some innuendos. So in this particular case, I may be speaking with a business owner about, coaching one of their leaders. And it turns out that as you're having that conversation, that leader is having an issue with a different leader on the team. And that's really where the root is, but we're only addressing one side of the issue. And really just kind of digging into why that is and what the long-term goal is and what success would look like when the coaching engagement is done.
Yeah. Are business owners typically patient enough to wait for an outcome like that to see success, or most of them a type A and she says, Becky, this is taking too long, we got to get there? I mean, how does that work? Is that a constant struggle for you?
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good question, Phil, because I think that you set a realistic expectation of a timeline up front. And we also set a realistic expectation of roles, right? So, if you're coming to me and saying someone on your team needs coaching, you and I are going to have a partnership too, and making sure that we're checking in and how is progress, etc. Now that doesn't mean that I coach Phil and then I go to Phil's boss and say, well, this is what Phil said. That's not coaching at all. It's more about talking about the progress, what we're seeing, and maybe addressing some hiccups along the way to make sure that the environment's right. An example of that too is environment makes such an important piece in that coaching relationship. So for example, if my coaching relationship with someone is going to be mostly virtual, I'm still going to want to spend some time, be it, an hour, two, or whatever it may be, hopefully more than that. Obviously, an introductory meeting with the person I'm going to be coaching up front to make sure the chemistry is there for both of us, right? To make sure that they're open to it and we understand each other's styles, etc. But also, I want to see the environment in which they work, because the environment in which a leader works, it has such a big impact on how they show up. And if I can actually see that versus just being told what it's like, I'm going to get a better perspective than just the one viewpoint that the person I'm coaching is telling me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. That's a very good point. Yeah, absolutely. Because it may be something totally different when it's a virtual kind of meeting as opposed to what you're observing while you're there, for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Wow. So, are there common denominators that you see in businesses and leaders that are strengths or weaknesses? Do you see it in every organization, or not?
Yeah, I wouldn't say there's necessarily a blanket statement that's going to fit that, but I will tell you that I think curiosity is a big leader of success. Curiosity helps us to continue to grow and look for more opportunities and ways to do things versus just becoming stagnant or, heaven forbid, but that's the way we've always done it. In this day and age, as things are changing so rapidly with AI and in other areas, we certainly need to keep up. And what worked for us yesterday is not going to work for us tomorrow, and we need to be ready for that continued focus on change. Now, again, your strength might fall in an area that doesn't necessarily embrace that rapid pace. So we're going to talk about that and how can we lean into something that you are good at to help balance that out, kind of neutralize the things that are tougher for you with the things you're really good at.
So you mentioned AI, which seems to be everywhere these days. And not going away anytime soon.
No.
It's been for the most part in the real estate industry, it's been a very good thing, except for some, like everywhere, some AI photos or, the AI staging kind of thing that doesn't always work so well. How is AI impacting you as a coach?
Yeah, that's a really good question. There's a lot of conversation around it as well because, there's so many different tools out there. A lot of people use AI as a thought partner, right? So you might, just kind of throw some of your thoughts or concerns about how you're handling something into a chat bot and just have that conversation with them. And that works. Of course, it's going to give you something, but we all know that AI comes back with very positive. You're great at what you do, Phil. You're the best realtor ever. And it's not going to give you some of that candid, solid feedback that you're going to get from a real coach. Most coaches I know are integrating it in ways to simplify the tasky things so that they can more focus on the people things where they really need to have that component with it. I think it's important to be upfront with your clients on where you're using it in your process, but I just don't think the people piece will go away from it. But I really encourage people to not be afraid of AI. AI's been around for so long, and we've been using it for so long, just not as rapidly as what we are today, and in some of the ways that we are. We were chatting with customer service people online on websites for years now, right? There's just a simple example of where we've been using AI, and again, people just need to get curious and get out there and play with it and look at how it can really help simplify so many of the tasky things that are a time suck from where you really should be spending your time, especially for those of us that are, entrepreneurial and solopreneurs who really value that time to be able to focus it on the right activities.
Sure. What is the sweet spot for Becky in terms of the type of company, the size of company, number of employees, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I've kind of worked across the gamut with that. I love it depending on what the company's bringing in, right? So I work with a lot of company on Clifton Strengths to be able to bring a common language into an organization to help them have good conversations and really work from a place of strength. For that, an organization that is housed in the same building is sometimes really helpful because you're really integrated into the culture with things on their desk as well as other signing, tying it to their core values, etc. But we certainly can spread that across multiple locations as well. The other piece that really hits for me is the size company that really wants to engage their people, embrace their culture, and really make it come to life. Like I said earlier in our conversation, we got to take those core values off the wall and really integrate them into what we do, from our selection process, how we make decisions on who we hire, who we don't keep on the team, in our performance management processes, et cetera. We should know what your core values are and what they stand for by who's successful in your organization and how it feels when you walk through your building. You feel a culture in an organization when it's right, and frankly, when it's really wrong, you feel it too. But you really feel it when it's right.
So if you have a multi-location, whether multi means two or three, and one of those locations may not be the quote-unquote home office, but another one of their locations really has a good culture, a great culture. How do you get that same culture to those other locations when it's just not the same? You walk in the building or wherever, you just see it's different. How do you change that?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And usually it's just the opposite, right? Usually it's when people are multi-locations. In the past few companies I've worked for have had multi-locations. And it can be a challenge, but it's pretty fun too, to kind of bring that all together. Often it's, headquarters or home office or whatever has all of the benefit of everything, right? In that particular situation, again, when we lean back into core values, the conversation is around each location is going to have its own personality, but the non-negotiable there is the core values.
Yeah.
To drive a true solid culture and core values, a lot of times I see and feel it should come from headquarters, because it really needs to start with the top of leadership for that to go through
sure.
and cascade throughout the organization. In the example that you gave, say you've got an organization that has 4 locations and you have one that's just thriving, to your point, doing really well and great with their culture, and how do you get that into the other ones? I'd go spend some time there, find out what their best practices are, what are they doing, and what can they be sharing with others, and how can we make some of those standard processes with flexibility to fit each geographic area, but make them tick for the whole organization. And,
Sure.
at one point I had a boss who, when somebody would come to him and share what a great thing they were doing in their particular business unit, the first thing he said is, have you shared it with your peers who are running other business units? Because if it works in yours, it's going to work in the others, right? So
Sure.
if something
Sure.
really good happens, don't just try to hog it for yourself. Share it with others,
Yeah.
because you're looking at the greater good of the organization that way.
Yeah. So, I think, and I believe, and it's been reaffirmed many times in the last few years, but we have a pretty cool culture, Keller Williams International, but also right here at Keller Williams Harbortown. But it's interesting, and this is where you could help. Someone said to me the other day, "It's so cool when we come to this office. You guys are so collaborative. You're so caring for each other, that kind of thing." How did that come about, and how do you define your culture? I couldn't do it. I'm like, we're just all the same. We're just us. We're just doing life. We want to support everyone. I mean, I couldn't define it. Is it possible to define a culture?
Yeah, I think it absolutely is. I think it's a great exercise and a fun exercise to help organizations do that, because we would look at what the things. Let me back up a minute, because this is the kind of stuff I get pretty passionate about.
Yeah, good.
The thing is, as I said earlier, you have a culture and it's there, right? But sometimes when we're in those 4 walls, be it a good culture, a really strong culture, which it sounds like you have, and people are asking questions about it, or a not so good culture, sometimes we get stuck in those 4 walls. And we have to think outside of that, and how could we share this with others? Back to our multi-unit conversation, et cetera. But in the particular example that you shared, Phil, I'd ask some questions to that person. I'd probe a little bit more about what is it that makes you feel like our culture's strong here, and what are you feeling when you come in as a visitor? Because we sometimes take those things for granted that we do every day if we have a strong culture, and somebody from the outside comes in and sees it with a different lens. Now,
Oh,
to your
for sure.
question on how we would kind of define core values, define culture, that's a great exercise to kind of go through. And there's really just kind of a mapping journey of conversation and activity and involvement to talk about what's been successful and what really works, where any disconnects are, and then looking for kind of that constant pattern of what repeats for what makes people successful and engaged and just really participative in your organization. And then that's where we would peel back everything and say, this is who we are. Now, how do we define what this looks like here? And how do we bring these to life in our organization?
Yeah, yeah. It's been fun to see other realtors from our other locations come to Holland, come to Harbortown to be a part of whatever it is. We call it agent coffee. We have lunch and learns.
That's great.
We have hangout time, and it's just fun because they come and they go, wow, this is just so different from our office, but we're all owned by the same great leader,
Yep.
Alyssa, but yet the culture is so different at the various locations.
Yeah. And you're going to have that. You're going to have personalities based on communities in which they operate too, right? Some of it's, especially if it's, nationwide, you're going to have geographical things that tie to that, et cetera,
Yeah.
too. But that's, again, where those core values, having those as a baseline to what guides and aligns your actions, really could be a great piece to kind of hang the hat on of what the expectations are for all while leaving the flexibility to meet your community needs.
You've probably answered this through the core values, defining and understanding your core values, but sometimes our culture tends to drift away.
Mm-hmm.
How do we avoid that from happening?
Yeah, I think the key there is to recognize it, right? To recognize that something is changing, something is shifting. And there's different variables that will lead to that shift. It can be a change in leadership, it can be a change in business dynamics, economic scale, et cetera. So many things can shift that if it's not solid to begin with. What I see happen often when there's a shift in culture is people get quiet. And there's less conversations at the table and more of the
Sure.
sidebar conversations. More times where you walk up to a couple of people speaking very quietly and the
Yes.
conversation shuts down when someone else walks up. The meetings after the meeting, those type of things are
Yeah.
things to be aware
Yeah.
of. There's been a lot of buzz in the past couple of years about quiet quitting, but it's a real thing. When people,
Sure.
again, don't feel seen, valued, and heard, they're going to kind of shut down and they're going to look for an organization that provides those three things because it's important as an organization to provide those to your team.
Before we continue, I'd like to give a big shout out to our amazing sponsors for making this podcast possible. Lighthouse Title, Independent Bank, Josh DeVries Mortgage Lender, Cooper Insurance, Jose Morales, in partnership with Fremont Mutual Insurance. Thank you for your support. Check out their info in the description below. Let's dive back in.
How do you help leaders, people within an organization, stay focused on the long-term goal?
Yeah, I think it's important for us to make sure that long-term goal is really well defined, right? What are the goals of the organization that we are all working together to support? Because that breaks down silos and it really helps everybody focus on greater good of the organization and what are our actions doing to move the ball forward to that end goal of what we want. And being able to have the trust amongst a leadership team that they can have those tough conversations when they need to too. Getting to know each other well and really building that vulnerability that's going to, showing vulnerability that's going to help build that trust and really build that team, because you don't build teams in the middle of crisis. You need to build the team ahead of time to make sure you're there and aligned together to support the crisis. And then for senior
interesting.
leaders, my biggest recommendation would be to be kind of that calming, steady force. If you become reactive and it just doesn't help others. It kind of puts everybody else in a swirl. If you as the leader becomes very reactive, it puts everybody else in that same track because they're going to follow your lead.
Sure. We see a fair amount of, well, and you can see this statistically for sure in Ottawa County, we see a lot of people moving into the area from other geographical locations around the United States, but also coming from Europe and where have you. When you mix different ethnicities or even cultures like that into an organization, how do you navigate that? Because somebody from Holland that's been here, lived here all their life, and then now they're working with other people. How do you meld that together?
Yeah. Again, I'm going to go back to, if you have a strong culture and core values, the expectation is easily set. And this is what makes people successful here. This is how we work. This is how we act together, etc. I would also step away and say we need to be open to everyone, right? And make sure that we're providing space for everyone and making it a comfortable space for people. And you can do that through a variety of ways, including how you focus your culture around that, to make sure we're not promoting any type of favoritism or separating groups in different ways from, well, these people have worked for us for a really long time, or these are the newer people in the organization, and making sure we're really functioning on that one team for the goal of what's the best, greater good for the organization. And that's where those goal alignments are so important. What are our organizational goals, and how does that cascade through the organization, and how does everyone know how they contribute to that goal?
Sure. What is what in your 10 years that you've done this since you graduated from college, what has been the number one issue that just keeps up every single time in an organization? Is there one thing?
I don't think there's one thing, but I will tell you something that I will hang my hat on forever, is people will continue to disappoint you unless you tell them what you expect. And as leaders, as coworkers, as humans, we need to let people know what we expect. It doesn't mean we demand something from them. I mean, as a leader, you can set the goals and expectations, etc. But when I have a leader come to me and say, I can't believe they did this way, or I can't believe that they didn't understand what I wanted. And sometimes the response is as simple as, well, did you tell them? And you'd be surprised, Phil, how many times it's like, well, I just thought they would know.
Yeah.
And as humans, we do that too. It's like, we have to tell people what we expect, or we're going to always be disappointed.
Right. I've been guilty of that many times in business, but for sure at home when, I thought my boys would just know that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, Dad, you didn't tell me. I didn't know. Yeah. What, if you were, to engage with someone today, and this is I know this question is impossible to answer, but I'll
give it a try.
Yeah. So you start working with my organization today. This goes back to type A. I need to get on with my business and not meet with Becky for 4 hours. And what if we engage today? When might I start to see some success, some change?
Yeah, you're right. That is a tough question because every situation is different, et cetera.
Right.
But we would set some of those goals, right? We would set what we want that to look like. And one of the things I do with people just conversationally when they ask for some advice on how to do things, I encourage people to begin their day with intention in mind, and to end their day with reviewing what that intention was and how did they do. So your intention today, Phil, might be to be more present for people when they're speaking with you, and really focusing on listening, right? Like we talked about earlier today. And how can I really be a better listener and give my full attention to people when I'm having a conversation with them, and truly listen to hear and not listen to respond. So that could be your intention that morning, to say, okay, it's Tuesday. Today I have, meetings X, Y, and Z, and I'm really going to be intentional in understanding and seeking to understand versus just giving my viewpoint on something. So you set that intention in the morning, and you really put some purposeful thought to it. At the end of the day, you revisit that, and you kind of rate yourself. How did I do today? Today when I was going to meet with Becky, we were going to have a conversation, and I was going to not look at my phone. I was going to not be distracted, and I was really going to listen to her. Did that happen? And just, kind of give yourself some feedback on yourself on that day. And again, this goes back to that self-awareness piece and understanding where you need to focus on some improvement or where you need to focus on being intentional and really putting those things into practice. Because what we practice turns that into something that we're really good at, right? It's like anything else. If you're training for a marathon, you're gonna have a schedule to practice things, and you're going to review your times and how you did and are you growing. You should do the same thing as a leader. How am I showing up, and how am I being intentional each and every day? And if there's someone that you work with that you really trust, I've done this for years in my career, I take a feedback partner. So if there's something I'm working on and we're going into a meeting together, a group meeting, I'll just check in with my feedback partner afterwards and say, okay, they know what I'm working on. How'd I do? Any feedback for me? And I really push people to give you some of the growth feedback as well. It's so important versus just the sunshine.
And that takes a lot of trust to have a person like that. Yeah.
It does. Yeah. And it takes a lot of trust. And you build that trust again by being vulnerable and saying, hey, I'm working on this within myself and I need your help to be able to improve in it.
Yeah.
And if you trust somebody enough to ask them to do that, they're going to take that assignment pretty seriously.
If I asked someone that, they'd say, well, gee, that's about time you did that. Yeah.
Well, sometimes humor has to break the ice a little bit. So
yeah, right. So your best coaching and or leadership book that you would recommend?
Oh my goodness, there's so many. I'm a big Simon Sinek fan. I really am. I think
there you go.
Obviously, the pieces that focus around the Clifton strengths, obviously that started way back in the day with Soar with Your Strengths before Gallup got involved and turned it into the Gallup Clifton Strengths and understanding that. There's a book by Gallup called Strengths Leadership, which takes all of that and gives you real world examples on how to work with people with strengths that you have and strengths that they have, and understanding where those differences come up together.
I read a book once, which was it wasn't a leadership book, but it was again about this listening. It was the question behind the question.
Yeah,
like I think that's a good book.
Was that the QB2?
Yes.
I actually built a development session around that book.
No kidding.
For a company. Gosh, it feels like it was a company I was working at. It feels like a lifetime ago, but we had a good time with that one because it's so important.
Wow, great.
It's a great refresh, Phil. Thank you for that.
Sure. So if someone wanted to engage with West Edge Coaching, how do they find you, Becky?
Well, it's Waters Edge Coaching.
I'm sorry, Waters. I'm sorry.
That real estate thing going. I get it.
Yeah, I do. I'm sorry.
Totally understand. The best way to engage with me is my website is watersedgecoach.com. And then also my LinkedIn business page is Waters Edge Coaching. And then also reach out to me on LinkedIn personally. I would love that. It's a great tool for business and spend a lot of time communicating through that way. And obviously my email and everything is available on my website.
Yeah. So just generally speaking, are you paid by a project or by an hourly rate, or how does that work?
Yeah, it's really because everything is so customized. We'll sit down together and we'll put together what we want to do, and then I'll put together a proposal and we take it from there and discussing and finessing it to fit both of our needs. Okay.
So when you're not coaching and leading, what does Becky like to do?
Oh gosh, anything outside for starters, which is so good to see sunshine again. And it's a little warmer today, still not where we want it. We love to travel, and we always have. And, we always make time for that. And then, of course, spending time with our family and friends, all the importance.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Well, Becky, thank you so much for being on the Keys to the Community podcast. I appreciate it. I learned a lot today. I hope our listeners learn, and I hope some people reach out to you for coaching and leadership. And it was good to see you again today.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity, Phil, and maybe we can connect and continue to build the culture with you as well.
That'd be great.
Sounds great.
Thank you, Becky.
Thanks.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in to Keys to the Community. Make sure you subscribe and stay connected to what's happening across West Michigan. And if real estate is on your mind, reach out. I'd love to help.